is nutsos. Okay, good. The next thing we're going to do is, just before we talk about a couple of, what we do with charities, I just want to kind of give a shout out to a few people. First of all, Bruno and Joanne, this is their house, the Grizaros. Where are they? And all, Joanne's right over there, right? They've been extremely generous and, you know, kind, and so from the moment they step forward in the lab. And I also want to give out a shout out to Bruno's daughter Oriana. Like she coordinated a lot of this stuff also, and so I'm really grateful. Tony Charia here is our wonderful musician. I was, you know, you think that, wow, you know, you're running a party, you know everything's going on. Tony, you're a surprise. I thought we were going to have like an iPhone hooked up to a speaker or something like that, but this is so much better. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you brought cards along.
I do have some cards.
Yep. And leave them.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll put them out. And I also want to thank my parents, right? So, you know, it's kind of a funny thing, and many of you probably experienced this yourself, except for maybe you. So I'm going to give the young guns a little wisdom here, right? Especially when you're a young guy. I say this, probably young girls too, but young guys always think they know more than their dads. Like, that is just the way it is. And, you know, there's a lot of fighting that goes on, and I went through it with my dad. And he used to organize these massive, like, weekend of, you know, affairs with all our relatives. And I'm pretty sure now most of them weren't even our relatives, they just came along, but they all look Korean, so I just assumed we were all, you know, part of it. Like, we never use names. But I always thought, wow, you know, it's like my dad, you know, there's so many better ways to do it, and he would tell me, you know, oh, you do it this way, and we'd argue. And then it wasn't until years later that I realized, you know what, he was right on a lot of the stuff. But I think kind of when you're like 7, 10, 18, yeah, you know, sometimes 25, you want to show your dad that you know what's best, right? And, you know, in the end, you know, parents and their kids are all the same. And this is what it took me a while to realize, you know, and so, you know, especially like, you know, with kids, what do they want their parents to say? Well, my conclusion is they want the parents to say that they're proud of them, right? And what do the parents want? They just want something simple. They want the kids to say, we love you, Mom, we love you, Dad. It's that simple. It distills quite easily. And so my parents, for all, like, we really didn't have a lot growing up, but they saved all their money and put it mostly, you know, into these massive parties. And so, as much as I railed against my dad and said, why don't we save the money for something, you know, else, I realized community is important, and that's what he was teaching me, right? That's what my mom was teaching me, both of them were teaching me, and that's why the lab has now a 2-year tradition, which will continue next year, that we will always supply the food and the drinks, and we just want people to come together. We don't ask you to pay for anything, right? Because I've had a big problem, and so many of you know this with the community in general, which is I feel that there needs to be an awakening, a changing of the guard, because so much of it now is just students giving to the studio, students paying for classes, paying for workshops and everything. And, you know, many of you, I know new people are like, wait, he's giving me a bottle of you know, cold brew coffee or tea. What's this all about? And the answer is, it's a new paradigm, right? It's about leading, like leading. If you're telling people to give, better give first, right? And so, you know, do you fight with your dad? Sometimes? Yeah, let me just say, I know you probably think sometimes you win. You don't. You'll realize it later. But thank you all, and you're a continuation of, you know, what my parents, you know, taught me, and, you know, we just keep the ball rolling that way. Now, as part of it all, my parents were extremely generous, and so I feel that it's an important part of the lab's mission for us to be generous and help certain charities. In the past, we've helped. Last year when we did our anniversary party, we raised money for 3 organizations: the Hingham Police Department, the Hingham Fire Department, and the 9/11 Museum. And especially because the 9/11 Museum last year, they were going through all sorts of financial difficulties because they hadn't been properly funded, and they were talking about not celebrating the 9/11, you know, that day, which was also the day we originally scheduled to have our party, but then some people convinced me there's a better thing to do, which is not celebrate that day. And so this year what I've decided is we're gonna kind of do a little addition to that because continuity is important. And so we're gonna have sort of two tiers. We're gonna have a primary tier, which is which are gonna get sort of the majority of the donations, and then the second tier. And the second tier is, they're still gonna get something, and that's gonna be the police and the fire department, because I think, you know, continuity of appreciation, gratitude is important. And the two charities we picked, I'll talk about the first one, and then I'll have somebody talk about the second one. The first one is South Shore Children's Chorus, right? And, you know, many of you probably know that for like 15, 20 years now, funding for the arts have been, you know, has been like attacked, right? And I can just tell you, as somebody who studied a lot of math, which is part of my genetics, right? But I also studied a lot of music, right? And I was lucky and I was fortunate to grow up, you know, with, you know, a mother who was very, very into music, and with a father who absolutely hated it, right? Because that's important too. It kind of like, it makes you appreciate things. And so South Shore Children's Chorus, according to the mission statement, they keep the development and the well-being of their students as their top priority, and aim to create a safe space and loving community for choristers to learn, to grow, and to find their own unique voice. No auditions are required. They have 4 different choirs depending on, you know, your age. They have a Quincy campus at Quincy Point Congregational Church and a Bridgewater campus at Bridgewater State. They're a tax-exempt organization. They were founded in January 2016. And, you know, I've been watching them and listening to them, and I'm like, wow, right? Bringing people together, and yeah, do they charge? They do charge, but if you can't, if your parents don't have money, you just fill out a form and then they say, fine, come in free. They've never turned away anybody. So I think it's a worthy organization. The second one, I'm gonna have Jeremy and Elise are gonna come up here, and I'm gonna give the stage over to them, and they're gonna talk about the next one.